In light of some recent heartbreaking incidents, it's important to understand what are the rights we all have when our physical safety is at risk. Almost all the countries including USA, Canada, India and many countries in Europe recognize right to self-defense as a legal justification to use force to prevent harm. When we read third paragraph of preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it states that whereas it is essential if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. This means that human rights should be protected by the rule of law so that people do not have to rebel. Many scholars argue that the right to self-defense is already implied in this statement. If rule of law failed to protect human rights, people are morally justified to rebel against tyranny and oppression. The right to self-defense, either personal or collective, is seen as a moral foundation of human rights. Let's focus on the United States, where recent incidents have raised a serious question about justice and safety. To understand this better, consider a hypothetical case involving a girl who was tragically murdered. We will try to explore all the possibilities and outcomes. What if the victim has already realized that the person sitting behind her is going to stab her? What could she do before or during the attack? What could a bystander do before, during, and after the incident? What is the extent of power one can exercise during such situations? What are the legal and adverse implications of exercising the right to self-defense? Before diving into these questions, it is important to clarify one thing. Although you have right to defend your life and property, but the deadly force can only be used while protecting the human life, not the property. In US law, deadly force is defined as a force which a reasonable person would consider likely to cause death or serious bodily harms. It is also called lethal force, and in many US states, it is justified to use lethal force to prevent murder, kidnapping, robbery, and rape. States in USA generally follow two doctrines, the duty to retreat and stand your ground. We will understand what these two doctrines say about defending ourselves. First is the duty to retreat. In case of danger, you must safely leave that area, if it's possible. Only if escape is not possible, you can use force to save yourself. But again, leaving the area must be your first priority. States like New York and New Jersey follow this doctrine. Second doctrine is stand your ground. In this case, you can use force to defend yourself without duty to retreat or leaving the area. States like Texas, Georgia, and Florida follow this doctrine. There is one more, the Castle Doctrine, and this is a combination of both, the duty to retreat and stand your ground. It states that if you are in your home, in your vehicle, and at your workplace, you can use force as a first response. Otherwise, you must try to leave that area. Right to self-defense is a universal legal right in USA, and it is available to every person who is lawfully present in the country, whether it's a citizen, a permanent resident, foreign worker, a tourist, and even asylum seeker. Next important thing, while exercising this right, you must be at a place where you have legal right to be. You cannot intrude someone else's property and claim right to self-defense when they use force to refrain you to entering into their property. From their point of view, using force would be considered as right to self-defense, but from yours, it would be considered burglary because you are not legally entitled to go to that place. In simple words, you cannot legally exercise right to self-defense as an intruder to stop the authorized person to use their right to self-defense. Read it again. Next important thing, your response must be proportional with a pure intent to stop the unlawful act, not to kill or punish someone. For example, if someone comes and tries to slap you, you can slap them back to stop them, but you cannot grab a weapon and cut their hand. Next thing, suppose they already have slapped you and running away. You cannot chase and beat them. You should file a police complaint instead. In US law, slap is considered battery. A battery is an intentional and unlawful physical contact with someone without their consent. Another important thing is whenever you use the force to defending yourself, court will assess whether your force was proportional and whether you had no any safe alternative. That's why using deadly force should always be your last resort. Now let's talk about bystander. What a third person witnessing a danger to someone's life can do. In US, bystander can intervene in violent situation, and all that things like proportionality of force or using lethal force, all these things also applies to them. There is one more interesting thing. Suppose you are walking on a street and you see a guy shouting at a woman. Suddenly, he pulls a knife from his jacket. You are pretty sure that he is about to stab her. You intervene and hit that guy with a rod in his head. Later, you find out that that was just a prank and knife was fake. What would you do? What would be the legal implications? Here is the catch. Your action is legally justifiable because you had a reasonable belief that someone's life is in danger. Most states follow the reasonable belief standard. You do not need to be right and correct about the incident. The only thing, you should have a reasonable belief that someone's life is in danger. Again, court will assess whether your force was proportional and whether you had any safe alternative. So that's all for today. Be safe, be alert, be informed, and be aware. Bye bye.